Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA. I'm your host, André Natera. Today I'm joined by Ali Clem of Austin's Le Barbecue, recently awarded a Michelin-Star. Ali is one of the first recipients of a Michelin-Star in barbecue. Today we talk about Texas barbecue at the highest level, her hot takes on cooking a brisket, the meaning of legacy, and the impact Michelin has had on the barbecue world. She's going to tell you today how she cooks a brisket, so pay attention. Stay tuned. Great restaurants don't always bring customers in. Great stories do. Because in food, beverage, and hospitality, what you sell is only part of the story. It's the why behind it, the authority you create, and the experience that you build. Market Scale turns expertise into content that connects. Podcasts, video series, and industry education. Not ads, assets. Market Scale has brought Run the Pass and How to Manage Like an Executive Chef to life. Real-world examples of how great content leads the conversation. Because attention is earned, and the industry doesn't need more noise, it needs more leaders. Where do you see the legacy and the future of Central Texas barbecue going, but specifically your role in it now, because you're obviously playing a big part of that and you're making a major impact?
Right.
Heavy question.
I know. I'm like, you're starting out with the heavy hitter. I get it. Central Texas barbecue's obviously been around for generations and generations, and it's changed through the time. And I mean, just to say right off the bat, I feel like now it's continuing to evolve. So there is a future there. But I mean, my role in it is a lot deeper for myself. Because I learned from John Miller, and I was married to Leanne Miller. We were together for 13 years, living in that family, and
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can you tell people a little bit like that know nothing about Central Texas barbecue, know nothing about that family? Like,
see, I live it, so it's
you
like
live it. but to the audience member, they might not know. So can you give us a little schooling here on the
Yes.
on the backstory?
So the Miller family, Mueller, lots of people pronounce it differently. John said Meller, Leanne said Miller, and I think a lot of people say Mueller. So we'll just start there.
Okay.
So their grandfather, Louis Miller, started Louis Miller Barbecue in Taylor, Texas. And I can't remember the date right off the back of my head, but so he hired Fred Fontaine to cook barbecue. Well, they started in a grocery store, right? And they had a butcher counter, and so they started with cooking different cuts of meat before they would spoil, just so they didn't lose profit. That's how they got into barbecue. And they actually used to cook bone-in briskets, which is wild to me, and that's how it started. But I guess,
Why is that wild?
Well, have you ever seen a bone-in brisket?
No, actually I haven't. That's why I'm wondering.
Oh my God, it's wild. It's still
attached to the cow.
Yes. So it's the whole rib rack
Yeah.
on the back of the brisket, which is huge. I sourced two a while back, just to see what they look like and to see if I could cook them, or just the process in general, just because that's just like the beginning of what they used to do. And I wanted to be able to talk about it and really just have my hands and eyes and whatever else on it. And they started doing that. And moving forward, they took over I believe a gym across the street and made it into Louis Miller Barbecue. Well, they named Louis Miller's from the grandpa, but Fred Fontaine was the pitmaster over there. That's how that started. Well, John and Leanne's dad, Bobby, then I think he was drafted in the war a second time, which is bad luck. But he took over Louis Miller Barbecue after that. Next generation John started to cook for Bobby, and Leanne also worked in there, but she mainly worked like on the line, and as kids they would wipe tables. So this is like, this entire family is immersed into this restaurant. They're all making it work. Their mom, Trish, also worked on the line. Leanne would also help like create recipes that were non-traditional. And of course, Bobby always pushed back, she said, because Central Texas barbecue back then was a very traditional thing. And it's not pushed to the limit, I feel like it is now.
What would be traditional Central Texas barbecue back then?
Well, brisket, sausage, and ribs, honestly. I believe that the pork ribs were definitely a thing back then, but brisket and sausage, especially in Taylor, with it being German Czech families mainly, they really kind of stayed to that tradition.
So how did you get involved?
Well, I always say I married into it.
Yeah. Well, what's the long story?
The long story is I been in the restaurant industry since I was 18.
Uh-huh.
I work.
Where are you from?
I am actually originally, I was born in Harlingen, Texas, down in the valley, but mainly grew up in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
And then I played soccer. I was a very competitive soccer player. Played club since I was 12. Then I moved on to Olympic development. So sports were really like my thing, like especially soccer. Of course, as a kid, you get burnt out on things. And I decided I wasn't going, long story short on this, I decided I wasn't going to play soccer in college. And I picked up lacrosse and flag football, which is actually extremely competitive in college. I had no idea, but a whole lot of fun. So I'm competitive in nature, right? Which I feel like goes into restaurant culture.
Yes, it does.
Yes. So I got sucked into my first, I feel like, real job in college as a hostess at Chili's in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Shout out to Chili's in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Because I went to Stephen F. Austin. And they wouldn't move me up. I was a hostess forever, I feel like. And I was like, let me wait tables. Let me bartend. And my manager, I'm not going to say his name, but you know who you are, would not move me up. So eventually I got to wait tables. And then just, I loved the pressure, like you just have to really just be on your A game with a large section, whatever else. And then I'd watch the line. I graduated to Expo, and that Expo is like, it just fuels you, just fires that dopamine in you, where you're just like, red just showing up on the damn screen, and you're just trying to get everything out, and people return things because the kitchen doesn't care, and whatever.
I would imagine, I've never worked in a Chili's, but I would imagine it's a fun environment, especially in the kitchen.
Well, it was a franchise back then,
yeah.
And then corporate bought it out and I left. But as a franchise, we had a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
And so we would have after parties and whatever else.
When inside the Chili's, like when everyone leaves?
Yes. We would call it Cancun night. I can't believe I'm even saying this. Somebody's going to get in trouble.
Okay.
And whatever happened.
Hopefully it's the same GM there.
No, I think there were 2 GMs that were there while I was there. And then.
Why was it Cancun night?
Things got wild.
All right. Fair enough.
And I was like, but back then I was a kid, like 19 years old. And I'm like,
Cancun night sounds awesome.
I was like, this is awesome. And it was just like the wait staff that would hang out, bartenders that would hang out. And it was just like.
Cancun night sounds like the type of thing that's like really fun and idea, gets a lot of people fired.
Yeah, possibly. But I was, just a hostess.
Yeah. There you go. / Expo, right?
Right. But that came with time. But I was there for a few years. Corporate restaurant, you can learn a lot. And I kind of took that base and I moved on to more of a local chain with a local family. And I learned a lot through them as well. I was there for a couple of years, moved into management. Also did some kitchen work, Expo, and also Sauté. Sauté was like one of my favorite things. And then just, 10 years in East Texas. And I was like, you know what? I'd gone through a bad breakup. I just bought a house and without airing out all of my dirty laundry, I decided that it was time to go. I just maxed out my potential there, and I needed to grow. I needed to move on. And my cousin and his husband live here in Austin, and they were like, just come move in with us. Find whatever job you can. Just get out of there. And I was like, great idea. So I packed up my dogs, my TV, my clothes.
How old are you at this time?
I was 28 or 29. And I was ready. And to make a big leap like that after you've been there for 10 years, is huge. But it was pretty much like, just do it. Like, just get it together and move on. So I did. And it was really hard to find a job in Austin. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It was, I came in with a resume that I thought was great. I had management experience. I've bartended every bar I can get my hands on, from big venues to speed bars to restaurant bar. And, wait staff. I did some training, of course, and it wasn't good enough because I wasn't a local and I didn't know anybody.
So what'd you do?
So I picked up a barista job in Westlake.
At Starbucks?
No.
I don't know. Where at?
I don't even think it's there anymore. It's called 360 Uno Trattoria, and it's off of 360 over there. Al, who owns it, nicest man. And I actually really love the GM there, David. He was super nice. And I didn't have barista on my resume, right? And they do like the traditional Italian coffee, grind, press, like there's a science to it. So I thought that was pretty cool that I could learn something to possibly add to my education. I hated it for many, many reasons. Being there at 5 a.m.
And that sounds terrible.
Yeah. When you first moved to Austin, though, and I was having a good time.
Yeah.
5 a.m. comes really early.
5 a.m. in Austin when you're 29 is not fun.
No, it is not.
Unless you're going to bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I made some connections, and just by going out and doing whatever, and I picked up a job at a bar on East 7th Street. It was called Rusty's. And they had just opened, and it was a gay bar. They had a dance hall on one side, and then like a lounge on the other side, and then like a outdoor patio space in the back. So I started out part-time there. So mind you, I was still working as a barista in Westlake. So I would work from 5 a.m. to, let's say, about 2, go home, take a nap for a couple hours. And I would ride my bike from Cherrywood to downtown to work my bar shift. And I would get off. It just depends. If I came in early, I'd get off, in mid-time. But if I was to work the close, I was off 3.
Yeah.
So I had 2 hours.
Fuck.
So, but I had, it's easier to find a job when you have a job.
Yeah, that's true.
So I didn't even care. And I knew this was going to be forever. And I have a work ethic like a maniac. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's what I got.
Well, I would say you're doing pretty well.
I feel good now.
Yeah. So how did you get into barbecue?
So I met Leanne. She came into the bar with one of her friends, and she was actually sober at the time. It was actually really refreshing to talk to somebody that wasn't drunk and weird and, saying and doing weird things like drunk people do in bars.
Yeah.
And her friend was like talking her up, like, she's a famous photographer. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. She drives a BMW. I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, never talking to this person again. And she would come in again and again and again. It took a few months for me to be like, okay, we can date. And because I was very standoffish, I'm in a new city. I don't know what it has to hold for me. I was actually being responsible with myself and my time at that point in my life. And I feel like, it was the decision that I made, and we were together for 13 years. But okay, so I met her brother, John, who was about to open J. Miller Barbecue, which was a food truck off of South First Street. And I became pretty close with him right off the bat. He's charismatic. He's funny. He's a fun guy.
Yeah.
And he called. It was the morning they were going to open, and it was like 3 a.m. or something like that. And he called me and he was like, Ali, I don't have any onions. I need onions. Well, in barbecue, onions isn't everything. So I was like, okay. So I went to the grocery store and I dropped off some onions, and he had one employee, Kevin Kelly, who does a podcast out of California, Kevin's Barbecue Joints. And he'd never worked in a restaurant before. And Kevin looked like a deer in headlights. I walked in and John's pacing because he paced.
Yeah.
And Kevin just didn't even know what to do. He was just standing there.
And this is what, right about to open?
This was at 3 a.m. He was going to open at 10:30.
Oof.
I was like, John, this is a shit show. I was like, what are you going to do? I was like, and he just was like, I'm too busy to answer questions right now. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go home. I'm going to shower. I'm going to take a nap. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to help you open this place. And I did. And I never looked back.
So when you first started helping, what were you doing for help? Were you working, in doing kitchen help, or was?
For sure, I would do some prep for him, but again, I'd never worked in barbecue before.
Yeah.
So
What year is this?
This is 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd never worked in barbecue before. Like, of course, I've eaten barbecue.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from Texas, but actually prepping it is like a whole nother animal. It's something that I was not even used to. I mean, there's like several days process to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked the line where like I get sides and, talk to people because John was a surly motherfucker.
Yeah.
He'd talk shit constantly. And so I immediately was like, wow, working in a food truck, first of all, I'd never done before. And working in barbecue, second of all, is something I'd never done before. So I really kind of attached myself to it immediately. And he was like, do you want to come back tomorrow? No, he didn't ask me because he never asked me anything.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll see you tomorrow.
When you started working with meat,
Mm-hmm.
and you're starting to do the briskets and things like that, what were some of the first lessons that you learned that is important when it comes to barbecue? Like, what were some of those things? Like, have you seen the movie Ratatouille? Where like, okay, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. Like they're giving Linguini the tour and telling them all the do's and don'ts. What does that look like in the barbecue world?
Well, I didn't learn that until later because John definitely was a I'm going to control everything kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot of things by watching. I would definitely keep my eyes on him, and that was beneficial to him. And the first time actually he trusted me to even cook anything was probably 3 weeks in, which was pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was because he was like, okay, you've got this. Like, you can do this. Like, you're smart enough, pretty much. And I started kind of like putting the briskets on. Well, he got his briskets pre-trimmed.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even learn how to trim a brisket until much, much later.
Mm-hmm.
So I would start cooking them little by little. Well, he went to the hospital and we had to close down the trailer. And I think it was day 3. And this is at the point where Leanne had bought the business from his investors. And Leanne's like, we got to open. Like, we can't just, money's coming out. And he was like, send me Ali, like the fucking Godfather. Like, send me Ali. And I was like, okay. I was like, what? He's like my brother. I'm like, what, John? He was like, you got this. And I was like, got what? He was like, we need to open. We have to open. And it was like, he's like, you've been watching me. I've told you a lot of things. You can do it. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, all right, well, you just collect yourself. You think about, I literally ran through all of the things that I know, all the things that I need to know, and just kind of went with it. So I got up in the morning, seasoned the briskets, put them on, cooked them sort of like John does, but he never told me the full process. I only did like a portion of it, and then he would come in and pull them off. So it was just kind of like well, let's just see what happens. First day, I think they look shit, but it's fine. But I only did I think 10 briskets. I think I did 8 briskets, which I think is the least amount of briskets I've ever cooked in my entire life. And then it just got better and better, and then he came back. And it was just kind of like a trial and error situation. And now I look back on it and I'm like, that is wild, because brisket, I feel like, is not that crazy to cook if you just know it, you know?
But when you don't know it,
Yeah.
everything's easy when you know how to do it, right?
Well, when you don't know it, you overthink it.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, and then, you know, family drama happens, things happen, John happens, and we ended up having to let him go, and we opened La Barbecue. We shut down.
Who's we?
Me and Liam.
Yeah, okay.
So we shut it down. We gave ourselves 3 days to rebrand, actually make our own sausage in house with the shittiest grinder and stuffer you could ever get your hands on, but we didn't have any money. And we went for it. We had John Lewis at the time as well, which was beneficial, but he changed the cooking process completely. So the hot and fast situation that John did went to the low and slow that John Lewis did. So I was kind of like, well, you got that. I'm going to do the trailer. So that was kind of my role for the longest time.
What is the trailer? What do you mean by that?
So I would like prep sides, and set up the trailer. Of course, I'd cut on the block for over 6 hours or so. But that was, I was the meat cutter. And then I would do like, the register, like I would count down the register and whatever else. So it was pretty much like front of house.
Where was the location, the first one?
It was on South First Street in Elizabeth, right across from Elizabeth Street Cafe.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. What year was this?
This was 2012.
Wow.
So a lot of things happened in that time that I got into it. And November 3rd of 2012, we opened La Barbecue, and I will never forget, we fired John on Halloween of 2012.
So at what point do you go from the trailer to the quickie picky?
So we moved around a few times, because we're a food truck.
Yeah.
You know, development in Austin is a big deal. So we moved from South First to 6th and Waller behind Uptown Sports Bar. And it was just a tiny lot in the back. But Ronnie Hernandez, who owned the building, and it was his family's building, he's going through a massive litigation to get it back from the people that they had leased it to. And he was like, just go back there, you know. Put your trailer back there. We'll have a good time. I just want a table that I can come to and sit every time I come in. We're like, easy. It was probably our most fun lot. That's when the original Sheriff Charlie's was across the street, and Via 313. A bunch of great food trucks. And it was just, we're on East 6th. I mean, it was a blast.
Yeah.
But it was tiny. Unfortunately, Ronnie got into a really bad motorcycle accident and passed away.
Oh, please.
And the lot went to his daughter. His daughter was super sweet, of course, and was like, look, I don't know what's going to happen with this land. You're going to have to pretty much look for another spot. So we went to Cesar Chavez and I-35, that big lot that's now being developed. We were there for a little bit. There's a soup kitchen next door to it, which created a lot of traffic that was not beneficial to us late at night when I had my cooks there. They just weren't safe. Yeah. So we had to break that lease for safety reasons. And we moved to East Cesar Chavez, down the street next to what was Stay Gold back then. And that was a great lot. We were there for 2 years, I think. 2, maybe 3 years. And then the guy who owned Quickie Picky was like, look, are you looking to move into a building? I don't want to do food out of this Quickie Picky anymore. So we went over there, we looked at it. And at this point, we had 3 smokers, a prep truck, and a service truck. So we had like what I call a gypsy camp, if you will. And so that's 4 food truck permits. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And the stress of that, and the stress of a food truck in general, is just hell.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, but before
Yeah.
we get into that, keep going.
So it was like perfect step. It was literally like diagonal across
So
the street.
when did you go into Quickie Picky?
We went into Quickie Picky. Let's see, we've been in 4 years in the building here, and then 3 years before that.
This was like 17.
Yeah. Something like that.
So when the Fairmont Austin was opening up, we rented a house behind Laundrette,
Mhm.
and yeah, that was our R&D kitchen, right? We just turned an Airbnb into an R&D kitchen. We had to R&D every recipe for like 6 restaurants. And I had a team in there, and we would go and cook every day. But for lunch, we would go to the Quickie Picky at La Barbecue every day.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I like to say, when we were developing in R&D, we had Michelin-Star food every day. We had our Michelin-Star lunch daily.
Oh, that's so nice.
But yeah, that so it's good memories for me having your barbecue. The funny thing is most of the people that I was working with at the time weren't from Texas.
Right.
They were from all over. They had moved here, and everyone's like, "Let's go check out the LA barbecue." That was always the thing. It's like LA barbecue, and we're like, "Why is it LA barbecue in Texas?" Like we would have these debates.
Common misconception.
Yeah.
It's fine. At least they're talking about us,
Yeah. No, it was great though. It was great. It was great barbecue. Or it is great barbecue, I should say.
Thank you. But yeah, the Quickie Picky, it was like that perfect step. So we were going from a small footprint to a little bit larger, but indoor plumbing, which was fantastic, and security. So we fenced in the whole back area with our smokers. We had a Dishland, and I was like, oh my God, Dishland, hello. That was like my big deal.
Yeah.
I was like, because dishes in a food truck is hell.
Right.
So that was like that perfect next step. And I feel like it allowed us to grow just enough to allow us to get to where we are now.
For the people that are listening that often think about opening food trucks, what are some of the do's and don'ts in hindsight that you would say, look, before you do this, here's some things that you should definitely know?
Well, sleep now because you're not going to sleep.
Yeah.
Also, location. I always say location is number one. Because you want that foot traffic. You want those eyes on your trucks. How many food trucks? Countless amount of food trucks in this city, which is fantastic.
Would you advise people to go to like a food truck park?
If it is one, yes. These days. Now things are very different now than they were when I was in a food truck. Now you have like a grease trap and electricity and water and everything is all in your rent. When we had to rent a commissary kitchen, which is not cheap, but now it's completely different. So a food truck park allows for that, which is less of a headache than what we would have to do in the past. So I definitely think that's fantastic. The one off of Weberville, with Desnudo and Kurlachi's and a few other great ones. People go there and they hang out. And it's great. And they have a bar. They have a couple bars around there. I think that the food truck scene now allows for more space.
So someone asked me the other day, they said, hey, I want to open up a food truck. And I told them, before you go put your money into it, I said, get a Yeti cooler and try and sell out of your Yeti. Because if you can't sell out of your Yeti, you're not going to sell out the fucking, and you're welcome for saving you, $60,000 or whatever you were going to put into it. Right?
It's more than that.
Right. So whatever you spend on the Yeti, you're welcome, right?
Yeah.
Consider that. But what do some of the startup costs look like for people that are getting into a food truck? And so startup costs, what does that look like? But also, what are some of the headaches and the stressors that people just don't think about because they only see the glamour of I want to have my own food truck. Which
is great and it is fun, I will say. But you gotta really want it first of all. But let's just start with buying the food truck, right? And you got to outfit with everything that you need, and then also make sure that you have the refrigeration that you need. But you can't overpack it because the electricity in a food truck is not always there. Also the plumbing, you got to make sure, that it's very sturdy because it's going to be used more than you think it is. So I would also say, maybe educate yourself on a little bit of plumbing. And I did some electric work in that food truck, but I would not suggest that. But, little things like that just to offset some costs. That's probably shouldn't be recommended, but it is what it is. Also, so you've got your food truck. That's number one, of course. Branding is a big deal because, we wrapped ours in a bright yellow with rainbows and flying sausages and, all kinds of stuff. And it was an immediate eye grabber. They're like, what is that? And so branding is another one. Food truck, branding, location, and also don't make your menu too big.
What does typical startup cost look like for opening up a food truck? In today's dollars, what do you think?
Well, it just depends on what kind of food truck you want.
Let's just say we're starting a barbecue food truck.
I would have probably about $250,000 in your bank account to sit on to get you going to be safe.
Yeah. And why?
Well, first of all, let's buy your food truck.
Okay.
What does that look like? Maybe 75 grand. Okay. You're going to wrap it. That's another, let's say 20 grand and whatever else. Anything else really. And then after that, you've got to pay rent immediately. You're going to park you also have to get permitted. Okay. Well, that's another $1,000. Which is not crazy considering we just said $100,000. But after that, you got to pay your rent when you park on the lot. Well, and then you've got to get your inventory. And then you got to start paying your staff. Well, then you got to think, okay, you start bringing some money in. Well, then you got to pay taxes. And it's like
taxes.
I know.
Taxes. It's the bane of my existence.
Right. And then so your payroll. If you're doing it correctly, you've got to pay a payroll company.
Yeah.
And many, many other things. Just right off the bat. So then you've got maybe a little bit of a cushion.
What does your margin look like?
In barbecue?
Well, so in a barbecue food truck, but then also like just a general margins for food trucks.
Just depends on what you're cooking, I think.
Yeah.
The amount of volume that you're doing. It could be great.
Yep.
Because your rent is a whole lot less in a building. Your staff is a whole lot less, but you're still trying to make it work before you get up off the ground and actually start making money.
One of the things that you hear often, you hear this a lot more than I do, is everyone's saying barbecue's so expensive. How do you address that?
I always say, you should see what I pay for it.
Yep. Right.
And I know that that's not something that everybody wants to hear, but But
it's protein. It's all protein. That's
right. And it continues to go up.
Right.
And right now it's the highest that I've seen. Briskets are the highest I've seen ever. And I use an all natural brisket. And that is, it also adds to the price, of course. And that's not because I'm trying to price gouge people. And I try to stay as competitive as possible. I do make sure, to look around and see who's, selling their brisket for what, and then try to stay competitive in that aspect. But I don't want to make it so expensive where people can't come in more than once a month or twice a month.
So now how do you go from Quickie Picky to where you are now?
Well, we actually got really lucky.
Yeah.
We looked around, really wanted to stay on the east side. And we found the building that Mongers used to be in down Cesar Chavez, like not even a mile. And it was like the perfect size. The kitchen, we don't need a crazy amount of space for that. And then we had space in the back for our smokers, which is hard to find sometimes. So it was like perfect, just like dropped into our laps, I feel. And we kind of built it out in the space, designed it in a way that kind of looks like my house.
Okay.
With the art on the walls and vibrant colors and not necessarily, neons and animals.
Fuck, neon and animals are cool.
Yeah, no, totally. I've got neons in my house too, and some animals.
So now that you have the location, and now you're expanding, so now your team is getting bigger, and And also I should say, maybe because you won't, but maybe you will, but also from an outsider's perspective, the reputation is growing. People know who you are. You're on everyone's mind of like, okay, in the chef circles, who has the best barbecue? You're constantly in that conversation. So as you are starting to grow and you're bringing people onto your team, now you're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
You're leading a larger brigade. How do you develop the workplace culture for this new brick and mortar barbecue?
Well, that comes with time, obviously, and the crew to do it.
Are you thinking about it when you open, or are you thinking more so about we need to get this done?
We need to get this done. We need to open. I want to see how this works. That's what I kept saying. I want to see how this building works, how we move, like the best way to make it the best, if you will. And I came in with the majority of my crew from Quickie Picky.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have some really loyal employees that I love very, very much. And they rely on me for a lot. So I broke down the first and second day. I laid on the concrete face down behind the smokers and shed a few tears because, because I hadn't worked in a restaurant or even organized it and made it work in a long time. So, and this was a completely different space. And I was on my own doing this. I mean, I had help obviously, but this was me. I'm doing this. Leanne's there. Yes. But, this is my thing. This is what I'm doing. And she'll be like, Allie will do it. Allie will do it. Allie will do it. And it's like, then I have 10 things on my list. So had a small break, but we got over that hump the next week. I have an incredible crew, and that's really honestly what it takes to run a smooth and successful front of house, and of course back house as well. But so through that time, I kind of started getting people who were more capable, if you will, or worked with me like I needed them to work with me. And so now I have like a perfect crew.
How many are on the crew now?
I have 19 total in-house and out-of-house, which is perfect.
How many people are working on meats and smokers?
I have 3 pitmasters total. I have Francisco, who's been with me since 2012, and his wife, 2 of his nephews, his niece and his son also work with me now. And then I have Eli, who is now my GM, and he's been with me for about 4 years. And then I have Ian, who is 19 years old, and he is the sweetest, smartest kid. And he's just killing it back there. So with those 3, which is not a lot, but it's perfect. And then me, and I do all the specials and whatever else and fill in when needed. It's great.
Was there ever a moment in the new building that you ever thought we're not going to make it?
No.
The line was out the door.
Right.
From day one?
From day one.
And it hasn't stopped.
Right.
Congratulations on winning a Michelin-Star.
Thank you. It's unbelievable.
How did that feel?
People ask me this constantly.
Yeah.
And I still don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
What did it feel like when you got the call? Did you think that Michelin and barbecue was even going to be a thing?
No. In fact, we knew they were in town because the rumor mill. And I went to one of my guys, Ben, and I was like, who's my GM at the time, and I was like, could you imagine? I was like, us getting, a Michelin-Star, and he was cutting on the block, and we both laughed. We're like, yeah, right. And then just went about our day. Well, I didn't really even think, anything. And I got an email and they were asking me to submit some photos and then like a small bio. And I was like, oh shit, well, that still doesn't mean anything. They could ask a million fucking places to do that. So we did. And I was like, well, we'll see. And then I got invited to the award ceremony, and I was like, holy crap. And I emailed Lorena, and I was like, is this what I fucking think this is? And she's like, looks like we're going to Houston. But it still doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, well, maybe, you know, we'll get a mention or something like that. Because I feel like what we do is fantastic. But, you know, and we do pull in a great crowd. People, you know, rave about our barbecue. I love that. It's fantastic. But, you know, to be a Michelin-Star winner is asinine to me. So we went to the awards. They went through like the majority of everything.
Uh-huh.
And
I remember watching. It's like barbecue was right at the end.
yes.
Right? So they announced all the starred restaurants in Texas, and then they're like, and we have a special category or some shit like that.
And I was like, what? And I was like, I'd come off of a really long week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I had food and wine, and then I had a chef series out in Horseshoe Bay that was like 3 days. I was out there for 4 days, and it was like, I was just tired. It was just like back to back to back. And then I came home, slept Sunday, drove to Houston, went Monday, and went directly to the award ceremony. So I was like, so I came here for nothing. Like, you know, but that's just me in my head, just, you know, feeling sorry for myself because, you know, we're all human. We do that. And then they were like, and now we have this. And I was like, oh my fucking God. And I was like, and Chris McGee, who had worked for me, he was one of my pitmasters, Six and Waller. And he had gotten a Bib Gourmand, and he was sitting next to me, and he patted me on the leg, and he was like, I hope you're ready for your star. You and Evan are about to get a star. And I said, don't fucking touch me. And I was like, and he, of course, started laughing, because that's just, you know, that's how we talk to each other.
Yeah.
And he just started laughing. And sure enough, I got it. And, you know, they ask you to shed your jacket, you know, on the stage, and they put the chef's coat on you.
Yeah.
I shed my jacket at my seat, and like, just, I'm like speechless still to this day. And it'll be like a year in November, and I still feel like it was yesterday.
Wow.
I heard Edgar Rico, who has Nixta, who had gotten Best Young Chef.
Right.
He stood up, and he's a big dude, you know, he's tall, and I could hear him screaming and clapping or whatever. And I went over and I pointed to him, you know, like, you know,
yeah.
And that was, but you know, to be on that stage with all those incredible chefs, and I knew a few of them, and you know, Amanda Turner was up there, and she hugged me, and you know, she was, you know,
that's right, because they got one for Olame, right?
Right.
I forgot about that.
And you know, she had some really kind words, and I just, you know, just I looked around and just took it in for a second. Yeah. You know, standing there in that white chef's coat, you know, with, you know, it's being live streamed, and all of these incredible chefs, you know, out in this crowd. And I was just like, oh my God. Well, and then they call me up and they hand me the mic, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's just so overwhelming. And I can't even believe it at this point. Like, how do you accept this?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do?
What did you say?
All I remember is saying, you know, we've worked so hard. Mm. And I also said, I'm trying not to cry. And the lady who's the MC goes, it's okay, you can cry. And I was like, no, I can't. Mm. But, you know, then I think I passed on either Evan or John Bates. And
so I would imagine now the line got longer. And now you have the traveling barbecue people that are, I mean, you probably already had that, but now you get even more, the people that want to come from all over the world because they want to try the barbecue. Strong opinions in the barbecue world, which I had no idea.
Oh, man.
I mean, chefs are opinionated, like, oh, what do you do with the stock? And, you know, everyone's right?
Of course.
But in barbecue, it's like, holy shit. They really are opinionated in barbecue.
Which is great because it creates a passion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's passion. It's like I have a chef's PSA meme that I do. It's like, no matter how good you think your barbecue is, your neighbors thinks it's better. Theirs is better. Yeah.
And I love when like people, I was in Oaxaca one time, and this guy literally stopped me. I had a La Barbecue hat on. He was like, hey, who are you? And I was like, I'm Ali. You know, and he was like, so how do you know La Barbecue? I said, well, it's mine. And he was like, what? Well, then he hijacked me for like almost an hour as I have 2 cups of not hot coffee in my hand now to talk about brisket and how he cooks his brisket. And then he shows photos and all this kind of stuff. But I love that. And I always want to be that person. And but it's just funny because it's like, well, this is what I do. What do you do?
So let's dispel some barbecue myths.
Okay.
I'm very curious because I know we've talked offline about this, and I've had Evan on the podcast a couple of times.
Of course.
And I was just down in Houston, and I went to Truth Barbecue, and I saw their operation, which was very impressive, and had their barbecue was excellent also.
Of course.
And all of you cook brisket just a little bit different. Who's right? So let's start there. Call them out. Who's right? No, I'm just
Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. Everybody's different. That's why I just say, I know. And when people say whose barbecue is the best in your opinion, I said nobody's better, nobody's worse. Everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And so in cooking processes, it's like, what are you familiar with? What is best for you? What gets the fucking job done?
What would be some of the controversial hot takes that you have when it comes to barbecue, though?
Foil on briskets.
Okay.
And I know this is going to be a good one.
Okay.
But for me, foil on a brisket seems asinine.
Okay. Why?
It's not necessary. And foil's expensive.
Okay.
And if it's not necessary,
So
why?
you use butcher paper?
Right. So I cook my brisket about 3-ish hours unwrapped. And then we wrap it in butcher paper. And then that time we take it to rotate through the smoker as needed.
Mm-hmm.
And we cook it for another 3-ish hours, depending. And then we pull it all in one.
So how long is that?
So about 6.5 hours max.
Which seems like, according to people, might not be long enough.
People don't believe me.
How do you get it done in 6 hours?
Well, we do cook fairly hot. So people usually cook about 250. Some people say 225, which is way too low. 250, 275 for 12 hours or whatever.
So what do you do?
So I do 325 unwrapped, wrap 350 wrapped. Wow. So we're cranking up that smoker 25 degrees to cheat that stall method.
Uh-huh. How, for people that don't know, like me, mm-hmm. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it's 12 hours or 6 hours, most likely. But for people like you and Evan and, some of these other high level barbecue experts, what would they say is the difference? What would you say is the difference between a 12 hour and is it the texture? Is it the rendering? What's different? I don't
know. I honestly, I have not found a difference really. Because I mean, if it's tender, it's tender. And if it's rendered, it's rendered. If it's got the bark on it, it's got the bark on it.
So is it just because that's the way we've always done it?
Maybe. And people like to say, oh yeah, I cooked my brisket for 14 hours. I'm like, so you spent 14 hours on one piece of meat?
Yeah. I don't know if we talked about this. Maybe I was talking with someone else. So if we did talk about this, please let me know. But in kitchens, you're working with, everything's working against you, space and time, mm-hmm. both. So I always like to say, if there's a more efficient way to get to a delicious result, let's always explore those options.
Of course.
And it seems like, and I'm just thinking, but if you could do twice as many briskets in the same amount of time, why wouldn't you?
Why not?
Especially if it yields the exact same result.
Right.
Right? Am I taking crazy pills?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've cooked thousands and thousands and thousands of briskets.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you know it, you know it kind of situation. If that's the cooking process that, I know, then that's what I'm going to teach and that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I had a cook that cooked for me in the food truck, and then he came to Quickie Picky to help me when we were opening up our brick and mortar location. And I was like, I've changed the cooking process. And he was like, what? I was like, this is what I do now. And he could not wrap his head around it. I'm like, I almost said his name. I was like, just follow exactly what I'm doing or what I'm saying. I even wrote it out for him. Time, temp, whatever. And he still just could not get his head wrapped around not cooking it for 12 hours.
When he finally saw the end result, was he like, does fucking brains melt out his ear?
Yeah, he's like, I don't know how to do this.
So is this something that you came up with?
No, I mean, this was traditionally how John and his dad cooked. They cooked hot and fast. So this is how I learned.
Ah.
So I just kind of like went back to my roots, if you will.
So if you started that way, did you ever go a different way and then come back?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So when John Lewis came in, he did a low and slow brisket.
Mm-hmm.
And he was with us for, I think, a year and a half or so. And we had a few cooks that would come in and they would follow his process. But, eventually and when we went into the quickie picky, I was like, this has got to change. I don't have time for this. And then of course 2020 hit and I was the only pitmaster in the bag, me and Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the only two cooking. And I was also working up front. So again, I was like, I don't have time for this. So I literally was like, fuck it. This is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. Texturally, is it different? Is it, from bark or anything like that?
I don't think so.
I mean, it's funny. The guys in Pecan Lodge in Dallas.
Yeah.
I've known them forever. And when I had my restaurant in Dallas, we would buy brisket from them because I don't remember what we were doing, like a tart flambe with brisket on it or something like that. But we wanted it to be Pecan Lodge brisket. So we'd go get the briskets from them. And I've eaten barbecue before, but I didn't really understand. It's like, I'm a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I would eat the Pecan Lodge barbecue every single day because it was just there. So it was like, I'm snacking on it.
And they do a great job.
And they do a great job. And I would eat it every single day. And so one day someone asked me, like, is there a difference between this barbecue and that barbecue? I said, honestly, it all tastes the same to me. But then I tasted that other barbecue and I was like, oh shit, it's not all the same. But I had to eat good barbecue every day to understand that there's levels.
Right.
I had no frame of reference of like what good and bad is. And sometimes even trying it for the first time, you don't fully get what's different between this one and that one until you've had it many times. And you say, okay, there is a qualitative difference between A and B.
Well, of course. And when you say bad barbecue, I mean, this is, you're referencing something that you just don't like. And,
yeah, but it's bad.
Well, okay, but
like, you know what I'm talking about.
Sometimes, I mean,
like fast food barbecue, like out of the steamer.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Because, everybody's got sometimes generations of families will, do the same barbecue. And I feel like, new barbecue restaurants, which, I'm fairly new. I'm not generations of, there's not generations of what barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like we just need to kind of like level up or kind of, let's just say, even evolve with the times and the recipes to grab attention and keep it fresh, keep it new.
Do you have any other barbecue hot takes?
Just because you add something that is not traditional Texas barbecue does not mean it's fusion.
What do you mean?
Well, we've added some things to our menu. Let's just say our sides or some of our seasonings and whatever else. And it's from our travels, right? We were inspired by that. But a lot of people are like, why do you have kimchi on the menu? I was like, well, I spent a month in South Korea and ate a ton of kimchi. Came back and I was like, man, we need to put up fucking kimchi. It would be great, with all these heavy meats and whatever else. And I think that a lot of people are like, if it's different, and then some traditional places, people get a little upset or have some opinions. But you're just keeping it fresh and like, interesting.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And obviously everything's evolving. The world is much more flat and we have the legacy, but we also have our own story.
Of course.
Right. Back to the opening question.
Okay.
What is your impact on the future of barbecue?
Well, being a woman in barbecue is few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we first started in 2012, it was very, very rare. Of course, there's women in barbecue all over the United States and the world at that. But to have eyes on, what we were doing in Woman in Barbecue, I really hope that it inspires the future of more women in barbecue.
That's powerful.
Thank you.
No, it really is. It really is. That's a lot of inspiration for a lot of people listening. I want to ask you as we kind of start wrapping up, if you had a Mount Rushmore of barbecue legends, and you had to put 4 people on that Mount Rushmore of barbecue legends, who should be on there?
Oh my God. Well, I'd have to put Bobby Miller up there, of course.
Mhm.
Leanne and John's dad. Um, how many people are on there? Four,
Four.
five, four?
4. If you need 5, go ahead.
No, I don't need five. I would definitely go into the Central Texas world, and there's that Kreitz Smitty's Blacks family that really kind of paved the way for the barbecue craze. I would definitely put some of their family up there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's 4, but I really think it would drop back to the original families and the original cooking processes for a type of recognition for that instead of new school.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion.
But that's still only 2.
Oh my God. No, I said Kreitz, Smitty's, Blacks.
Okay.
And the Millers. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
seriously,
Fair.
you got to think about that. I mean, that's
Mount Rushmore's legacy, right?
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and Lockhart in general is like the original, famed barbecue city or whatever town.
Yeah.
That's where. And then of course, okay, Tootsie. Let's put Tootsie up there.
Okay. Well, it's super cool to see. When I first started cooking, so I started cooking, I don't know, almost 30 years ago now, and we had to cook a certain style of food. We had to cook continentals, what we called it back then. So it was like Italian, French, whatever, and we never were really able to explore our heritage. Me being Hispanic, I wasn't able to really explore that type of food, and even barbecue to a certain extent. Not that it's my heritage, but I'm from Texas. And even then I never really explored it because I always felt like its time hadn't come yet in terms of all the culinary community accepting it. And now I think its time has come, not just for Mexican food, but obviously for barbecue, where it's bigger than just people that are into barbecue. It's for everybody. Barbecue's for everybody. And I could not be more happy for you and all your success.
Thank you.
And congratulations to you. Congratulations on the Michelin-Star. And whether you know it or not, you're carrying the flag. And congratulations to you for being that proud flag-waving, barbecue 6-hour cooker.
I always say, I don't know, I just work there.
Well, before we wrap up, where can people find you if they want to keep following along?
We are at 2401 East Cesar Chavez in East Austin, Texas. We're about a mile-ish off of I-35. We're open Wednesday through Sunday, 11 till sold out, max 6 o'clock. Here's something that people don't know. We do take pre-orders. I don't have a minimum. I don't have a maximum. You can order, sit with us, or take it out.
And what's the La Barbecue Instagram page?
LA_barbecue with a CUE. BARBECUE.
Got it. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
This was fun. Yeah, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. I'm going to bring you and Evan both on.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I love Evan. He's great.
Yeah, he is great. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to support the show, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, make sure you leave 5 stars. It's a 5-star podcast. I'm a 5-star man. If you want to get chef brains, I have lots of books available. English, Spanish, Italian. Some are free. You get free ebooks. Go to chefspsa.com where you get all of that. If you want early access to podcast episodes, you can become a subscriber on Spotify and also on Substack. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
No Andre in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction, stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, classes in session.